we have so much interest in this case is because the why question cannot be answered just yet. Why did Harif attack two people for absolutely no reason? Until we get the results back from the lab in Quantico, Virginia, from the FBI, we'll not know the answer to that. I don't have any estimate it until they get a report from the hospital, so they need some background information. There's a legal process involved in getting that medical records. You know, very sensitive in the modern era about HIPAA and patient rights, and so the state attorney's office, in conjunction with the suspect, the defendant's attorney, are working to try to get us that paperwork and expedite it. So I do not know how long this will take until we get those results. We've had three basic questions throughout the day. Let me go through those questions, and then I'll do my best to answer whatever other questions you have. We are getting repeated inquiries from local sources and from national media about the harmful substance that the suspect might have ingested. We've used the term a caustic fluid of some kind. Now, this was a typical garage. There were all kinds of solvents, cleaning materials, and things that you would not normally ingest, obviously. It did appear to us, and it did appear to the hospital staff, that he had ingested some chemicals. Now, your question, follow-up, will undoubtedly be, well, how do you know that? I had a long talk today with the hospital staff. I was actually at the hospital checking on the security arrangements for the suspect, and they are very sensitive about us releasing medical records at all. So I can't answer the question, why do we think he ingested a caustic material, other than to say he had symptoms and signs and results that indicated that to the hospital. There's been questions about the injury to our suspect's hand, which is right hand. He had an extremely deep laceration to his thumb, probably almost severing his thumb and doing extreme damage to it. That injury is completely consistent with what we've seen in our industry over and over again, and that is somebody plunging a knife into a hard object, which could be the chest or anything else. Oftentimes the offender's hand will slip down that knife. Once a knife becomes bloody, it becomes extremely slippery. If you've ever got your own blood and you're trying to wipe it off something, you know how slippery it can be. It does appear to us that that injury was consistent with his slipping, his hand sliding down that knife as he plunged it into the victim. The other question we've got throughout today, and I think the last couple of days, is what was the suspect wearing? What did he have on during the attack? If you look at the video clips from Duffy's, you can see that he's walking out with a hat on backwards, a pair of silky outer boxer shorts or running shorts, whatever you want to describe them as, and a blue shirt. Our witness across the street says very plainly that the suspect defendant had the blue shirt on during the attack. I don't know that he said anything about the shorts. Those shorts were not on the scene when we got there. They had not been removed by the paramedics. They were not on the scene, and so we don't have them. It would be speculation that he took them off on the way for reasons we don't understand. And those are the questions that we've gotten today in the last couple of days. So how about if I stop and see what other questions you might have? I'll start right over here, Corey, with you, and I'll move across from my left to my right and get your questions.
Is there an expectation on when, I know obviously you can't go into detail, can't really talk about what's going on right now in the hospital with Harif, but is there an expectation on when or if he might get better? Anything that you can tell us as far as that goes?
I actually took that up today with the nurse, and the head nurse was there, and she could not give us an idea. She did speculate that it could be fast or it could take a long time. I think they're still working very hard on trying to understand exactly what his injuries are internally. Okay. Sir?
Well, were you ever able to actually question him or speak to him at the hospital?
Yeah, the question is, did we ever get to speak to him at the hospital? The answer is no. He's been heavily sedated and not conscious, and since almost right after arriving at the hospital, I have said in the past, I can say it again now, he did make a spontaneous statement coming into the hospital. I guess he might have been aware that some kind of blood tests were going to be done, and his statement was, "You won't find any drugs in me." And that was really all we know that he said.
And going back to the shorts, I believe that there were some shorts found, and are you able to say, I think you said speculation, so have those been ruled out as being his, or you just don't know yet?
No, your question is, there was a pair of shorts found that was actually found by a camera crew, an alert camera crew. I've looked at the picture that the camera crew gave us of those shorts. They do look very much like the ones we see in the video. Unfortunately, the camera crew, for whatever reasons, maybe deadlines, didn't stay at the scene, but took a picture and called us. We went right out, those shorts were already gone. Unfortunately, we may never know about those shorts and if they were Harris shorts.
And the blood drops that were on the sidewalk down the street?
We saw that. I took a look at those pictures. Those are what we call 90-degree blood drops. In other words, somebody stops, leaves a certain type of blood spatter, different than somebody moving, and that was someone standing and bleeding. We have gone out there and took samples of that, and we'll know down the road. He had some injuries, some minor cuts on his hand. Nothing that we saw so far on the victim would indicate that kind of strong bleeding. That was relatively strong bleeding. That wasn't blood droplets. Those were nice sized drops, consistent with heavy bleeding. His hand appears to us to have been done at the scene as he was plunging the knife. If that blood that you see there would have been from his hand, my speculation, or detective speculation, is that we would have seen more than that. It just should have been blood all the way down the sidewalk. So it may not have been his blood.
And I also, I apologize, my last one. I know that one of the victims was bitten in the face, the male. Did I also hear that possibly in the stomach as well?
Yes, your question has been in the face, been in the stomach. He was, our deputy that arrived on the scene described, on the radio actually, I think if you've listened to the transmission, says, hey, he's biting the victim.
Can you tell us at all about any cooperation or lack thereof of parents of Austin Harris, or what, if anything, you've learned?
Yeah, Corey's question is, what have we learned from the parents, if anything? The parents did come in, the biological mother and father, and did give us some background on him. There's really nothing striking about that, and it's just trying to help us to know who he is and to try to understand what may have been going through his mind. Yes, sir.
So no word on the drug test yet from FBI, but will you guys have an idea of when you'll find out about this caustic substance he may have ingested? Any idea when you'll find out about that?
We know that the hospital is doing some lab work of their own. They wouldn't do the forensic analysis that FBI Quantico will do. We're not sure because of HIPAA and patient regulations how eventually we'll know everything. We'll know what was in his stomach. We did actually recover some body fluid, some contents from his stomach, and so after the FBI's done, we'll know that.
Does that imply that he vomited at the scene?
There was a lot going on with him medically. Yes, sir.
With the caustic substance, was there any indication that he was potentially trying to harm himself?
Your question was, with the caustic substance, was he intentionally trying to harm himself? That goes back to his state of mind and what Harris was thinking that night. Was he trying to harm himself? Was he imagining that he was impervious? I don't know. I wish I knew.
At what point, before, during, or after the attack, did he ingest the caustic fluid?
Because there's no eyewitnesses to what he did, we don't know. Laura's question was, at what point during this crime did he ingest that? We just don't know.
Was there any sort of empty canister or any sort of a container that indicates what type of caustic substance this was, or give any indication?
We recovered a couple of things from the house. One of them had a substance in it that I'm not sure what it was supposed to be used for, because it was in a clear bottle. So we're analyzing all of that.
Why do you think he drank something?
What I said before, Greg's asked me why I think he drank something. It was the hospital's opinion that he drank something. He had some medical indications that he had consumed something caustic, poisonous, and that it did some damage to him. I'm trying to be very careful with his patient privileges.
Yep.
And,
So, right, so I can't tell you exactly what the symptoms were. I can just tell you that he had symptoms consistent with having consumed a caustic poisonous substance.
And again, just talking about what his actions, his demeanor was that night. I know that we learned that he had believed to have very, intense strength, or seemed that he felt that he was impervious in some way to harm, but the dispatch call saying that he was on top of someone or providing them. Is there anything that he said, anything he did that that can be clarified that night before he was taken to the hospital?
Yeah, your question is there anything more? Is there anything he did that night other than the assault, being wrapped up with the victim that talks to his state of mind or his motive? And the answer is no. I think if you take the entire incident as we think we know it, after having evaluated the scene, we're still evaluating the scene, speaking to the witness. There was, when our first deputy got there and then the follow-up deputy, he was so intertwined with the suspect that it appeared to one of our deputies, he was intertwined with the victim. It appeared to one of our deputies that it was almost like a mixed martial arts and MMA hold. He was just wrapped around him. And so they were body to body, and they were trying to pull him away and just prying him off.
At some point in the radio transmission, someone yelled, "Come out." Was that someone outside the garage yelling at him to stop what he was doing, come out, or can you put that into context?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't. I'd have to listen to it and go back to it.
And is he still in stable but critical condition at this time?
He is in critical but stable condition.
After listening to the transmissions, how would you categorize your first responders' response to that scene?
And I thought about that. I've been in this industry 43 years, and I've learned to try to judge a deputy or an officer's actions after the fact is a fool's errand at best, because until you're there and you can reconstruct the exact lighting, what was known to the deputy, it's so hard to judge. I think my deputies did the absolute right thing. I know there's been a lot of question, why didn't we use deadly force? We used a lot of force, up to and including kicking the suspect in the head. But he was so intertwined with the victim, they were afraid that the projectile would go through him and into the victim. They did contemplate using deadly force. They had a lot of help. By the time it all ended up, there were 4 cops and a dog on top of this guy. So now we know so much more than we did. When the deputies saw the victim and the suspect in that tangle, she didn't know and they didn't know someone was already dead in the garage. They didn't know, and we didn't know until we were there and starting to work the scene, that there was a large switchblade on the ground. So they wouldn't have known that. They didn't know that the victim was dead. So to try now to reconstruct this and to make some kind of objective evaluation of whether the deputies could have used more force is at best a fool's errand, and it does a great disservice to those deputies. They did the very best they could. Our job is to protect and preserve life. We are not killers by instinct.
Have you been able to determine any kind of timeline? There was a lot of talk, yesterday we talked about that Ford Flex and the blood in that car. Do we still know or not know whether or not Mr. Stevens came home and saw an attack on his wife, or?
No. Unfortunately, we don't know the exact order. Who got attacked first? At what point did Mr. Stevens get attacked in relation to his wife? Unfortunately, there's no video. Our witness can only clearly articulate, and he's our best, the only witness we have, is that he hears the screaming, and he sees the offender on top of the female victim, the wife. He never sees the male victim on the ground. Does that mean he was focused on her and missed him laying there, or did that assault occur after he intervened on the wife's behalf? We don't know that yet. Our detectives, our forensic people are working diligently to try to reconstruct that scene. Until we analyze all the blood drops, we really won't know where the source of all that blood came from. We know We know the suspect bled, we know both victims bled, and we know our Good Samaritan neighbor bled. Very complex scene to try to reconstruct.
Do you guys know what he was doing before Duffy's?
Just before Duffy's, we know he'd been at his mother's house. I don't know that we know what happened prior to that. The mother lives in Jupiter, about 3 miles from the Duffy's.
Was he with friends that,
He was going for a walk with his dad right before Duffy's.
have you spoken with friends? Is there anything you can tell us about what friends may have said or what?
Yeah, we have talked to his friends, and they're not shining a lot of light on it. They did say his behavior was somewhat different, some more bizarre, but nobody is describing him as being, unfit to be in society or so bad that they would have thought he was going to harm himself or others and Baker act him. I mean, you see in the video from the Duffys, he seems to walk out like a normal person. All right. Well, we're doing our best to keep you all informed. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Very well.